Hello, Ivy here. This week's podcast and article summarises the so-called "We welcomed Meghan to the British royal family and the UK" media spin since news was published about the relationship between Prince Harry and Meghan Markle in the summer of 2016. From the very first article published by the Daily Mail and the other gossip publications masquerading as newspapers, it was very clear about the stance it was adopting. Initially, it was very colonialist in its tone, i.e. talking down to and about Meghan, deliberately disparaging the acting profession, but particularly the acting industry in the USA. It aimed to give the impression that it was a profession that was more suited to bargain basement activities, where people with no talent or skill gravitated and were treated like stars, but somehow it was deemed to be below the standard of the UK monarchy. Most of us have never believed that about either group, but more interestingly, since 2016, and the journey of hate and destruction that the Daily Mail in particular embarked on openly, people who had zero interest in the royal family started to take an interest. And over the last 6 years, increasing numbers of people are changing their views of the royal family, and not in a good way. Most have publicly stated that they had no opinion about Meghan either way, but they have now seen enough evidence to come to the conclusion that there are double standards being employed here with how Meghan is portrayed in the media and anyone else in the British royal family, but in particular Kate, the Duchess of Cambridge. Over these years, Meghan has secured 2 victorious decisions in the UK courts against the Daily Mail. Since 2016, the coverage has been disgusting, and the treatment of Meghan being deliberately put up as a target of hate took its toll. In January 2020, Prince Harry announced that they were stepping back from senior royal duties and would spend most of their time resident in another country. Prince Harry said that they were leaving the UK due to the increasing risks to their lives and mental health. It later transpired that Meghan had suffered suicidal ideations during her pregnancy with Archie and asked for assistance from the Human Resources team, who refused, stating that she was not an employee of the British royal family. Remember, no finance had been allocated to Meghan upon marriage into the family, like every other person who marries into the royal family. It was clear that Meghan was not regarded as family either then, so not an employee, not a member of the family, and there were concerns during that first pregnancy about what skin tone the baby would have. All the details of the above abusive behaviour is well documented in podcasts and articles on the SG UK platforms, as well as the wider Sussex Squad podcast and general media global community. Needless to say, the forces working to prevent the marriage of the Sussexes taking place in 2018, and then efforts to destroy Meghan's mental health to the point she would leave, and then the refusal of medical assistance for suicidal thoughts, only leaves one conclusion as to what the UK monarchy was looking to achieve. During this period, the Royal Human Resources team and royal reporters were in regular contact. One royal reporter is on record in 2 separate broadcasts confirming that the royal rota were aware of Meghan's deteriorating state, and they were in regular contact and exchanging information with the HR team. Let's not forget that discussions between human resources and anyone external to the team is a serious data protection breach. And to have regular conversations with a media group where there was an ongoing legal case in operation, and the increasing death threats from various far-right groups have ensured a number of victories on that area of the law, should the Sussexes ever decide to pursue it, because there is no denying the UK media have themselves moved into cruel and sinister waters with their coverage of the Sussexes. Their plan to stop the marriage, etc., has now moved on to anger and disbelief that the couple stepped away from working as senior royals and put their family and the mental health of their family as a priority. UK media then basically lost the plot, and now, upon the orders of the UK Monarchy, has thrown every rattle out of the pram, and is now trying to dismantle the pram, all to no avail, because their prey has left the building. But the anger and the need to score revenge points every day by just having yet another dig at this couple is placing them, without realising it, on a range of potential legal actions as their activity has gone online and crosses international borders. This podcast uses the analogy of the behaviour of a narcissistic ex-partner who cannot accept that their abused ex-partner has finally managed to escape the virtual prison, and the methods and the tactics used to try and get them to return. We explore how to recognise when you are in a toxic environment, workplace or family setting, and what to look out for when you leave. Recognise the tricks played and the mind games that follow. By the end of this podcast, you will be able to easily see where the UK monarchy, family and its media entered the game at various points, and the manipulation they attempted at each stage, all leading up to the current gnashing of teeth and beating of chests and needing the Sussex glow to shine on the family who chased them out of the country in the first place, but want them to visit for set pieces and then leave again, and be prepared to be the royal chew toy for those occasions when the British royal family need international coverage. And let's be honest, they need more people in the UK to care about a UK monarchy as well. It is all too late, and we will explain why over the next few minutes and pages that ship has sailed now. 5 years of abusive actions on UK soil, 5 years where the main target was and remains a USA citizen. The Sussexes stepped back from senior royal duties at the end of March 2020, after announcing their decision on the 8th of January 2020. That 3-month period proved to be just the start of what the monarchy and its media were prepared to administer in that 12-month period decided by the monarchy, whereby the Sussexes were meant to reflect, and in theory could return to the fold if their plan failed within that period. Nothing in the reporting, both on TV and printed media in the UK, did anything to suggest that the UK was concerned about the welfare of the Sussexes. It was really about concern for the remaining members of the royal family. The same family who for those 5 years had been described as relevant, and the Sussexes being described as irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. Only the royal family and its media were convinced that Harry and Meghan would fail, and published negative and inflammatory articles and held TV discussions with non-entity individuals who all of a sudden had expertise on such matters to come on TV and make their points. Sussex Squad knew that they would be a huge success, and there was no way they would be returning to an abusive environment and raise their children in such toxicity that they had existed for centuries in UK royal palace life. In that first year, the Sussexes secured lucrative business deals and purchased their first home. UK still refuse to accept that not everyone considers being a member of the royal family the ultimate pinnacle of life. The royal family and its media took and still do the rejection badly, and have been throwing tantrums and cruel actions ever since. What kind of person could fail to recognise that the ship had indeed sailed? How to recognise toxic relationships. 1. Lack of support. Healthy relationships are based on a mutual desire to see the other succeed in all areas of life. The system in place in the UK royal family is that each child that is born into that culture is immediately set up to compete with siblings and other relatives. In the case of Prince Harry, he was immediately expected to support his older brother and to have no projects or pastimes that overshadowed anything that the second in line to the throne was doing. Praise from UK media in relation to the next two kings is not based on quality or outputs. It is spun in a positive light regardless, and equally anything that spares do, that awful title given to second and subsequent children in that family with an heir at the helm, will rarely be praised, and if the older child or adult does not feel comfortable with the younger sibling receiving praise, then it will not happen. At no point will the heirs ever be seen or reported on as doing anything wrong. Never. Remember Meghan's phrase in the Oprah interview about the lengths the royal family will go to ensure a particular version of events goes out to the public. The quote, "They were prepared to lie to protect others, but not prepared to tell the truth about me and my husband." End of quote. And the list follows: toxic communications, envy or jealousy, controlling behaviours, resentment, dishonesty, patterns of disrespect, negative financial behaviours, constant stress, ignoring your needs, lost relationships, lack of self-care, hoping for change, walking on eggshells. Signs that you were raised in a toxic family. They get jealous and try to compete with you. They overreact, For example, fly off the handle for completely reasonable things you do as an adult. They compare you. They act like victims. Sometimes some parents guilt trip their kids. There is a difference between expressing disappointment and creating a toxic environment by blaming everyone else for their feelings. They do not respect your boundaries. They are always right in their mind. They give ultimatums. For example, a parent's love is meant to be unconditional. Some are constantly setting conditions that feel like threats. Conversations are always about them. They drain your energy. It is okay to cut ties with toxic family members. Detach. Give yourself space. It does not always have to mean avoid contact with your family. Detaching is an emotional concept and has nothing to do with physical proximity. So says Doreen Lancer, who's in one of the reference sources quoted, where she says, "It means not reacting, not taking things personally, and not feeling responsible for someone else's feelings, wants, or needs." End of quote. As an adult, you are not obligated to hang out with your family every free second you have, or even at all. Set the boundary that works for you. Avoid triggers. If you receive flack from family members about a particular subject, then stop talking about it around them. Try the grey rock method. This was in a blog by psychologist Nadine van der Linden, titled Unshakable Calm. It is basically a tool to prevent toxic people from escalating a situation. Act as boring, uninteresting and disengaged as possible, and toxic people will find it less exciting to try to manipulate you and choose another target. Keep a go-to phrase on standby. For example, "You may be right," or "I have to think about it." Eliminating toxic influences. Another quote from the MHA National Organisation, again listed in the reference sources for more detail. And the quote is, "Certain people and situations in life can trigger us to feel badly about ourselves or engage in destructive behaviours. Identifying the toxic influences in our lives and taking steps to create boundaries or a new life without them can improve mental and physical health over time." End of quote. Leaving a toxic work environment. Signs that it's time to move on. Has a colleague or a member of the family business ever taken credit for your hard work? Does the boss have favourites? Is your workplace constantly filled with bullying and harassment? You are likely dealing with a toxic working/living environment. A negative work environment is both mentally and physically taxing. Consider this a toxic workplace checklist with examples of the main ways an employer can spread animosity and toxicity. No breaks. You are overworked and underpaid, and your work always follows you home. Remember, there was no budget allocated to Meghan upon marriage into the royal family. Meghan paid for all of her outfits and associated expenses, undertaken all the tours that the royal family instructed her to do. Everyone else had a fund set aside for these purposes. All senior royals except Meghan had funds provided. Meghan had to pay for her own. Yet the UK media, who knew all of this, still wrote over 100 articles every day, which always included estimated prices for each outfit and hair and makeup, etc. All articles referred to the cost to the taxpayer, knowing full well Meghan was providing these things for herself. Always used local designers in the countries that she visited and had bespoke outfits made. Fear. Terrified of making a mistake because you know you will be scrutinised for it. Abuse. Verbally abused or harassed by toxic workers or family members. No recognition. You never get rewarded for your hard work. In fact, on occasion, credit is given to someone else who either is claimed to have helped you work on something or gave you the inspiration to produce this wonderful piece of work, etc. Remember the Smart Works project and the efforts by media to give credit to Kate? Sussex Squad soon had that trending in a very effective way. Guilt tripping. If you are thinking of leaving, you are convinced into staying. In the case of the Sussexes, it became clear that the target who the royal family wanted to leave was Meghan. They never factored in that Harry would leave too, and that it was all organised without anyone within the royal household guessing what was around the corner. Most days of the week, a certain TV presenter publicly demanded that Meghan go back home to the USA. Another psychological weapon used to erode away at the target's mental state, but they, as always, underestimated Harry. No accountability, regularly blamed for the mistakes of others. Let's have a look how to deal with a toxic work environment. It is hard to navigate how long to stay in a toxic environment. Here are a few things you can try to do. Set boundaries. Find outlets. Do something that you love that helps to relieve stress. Find a support system if you can, such as a friend, someone outside of that toxic environment. Avoid chatter or gossip with colleagues or family members. It can fuel the fire. There may come a time when you just have to leave. Come prepared, with your letter printed, clearly stating the date of leaving and your reasons why. There are some volatile situations, such as an abusive family setting, that you will not be in a position to say when you are planning to leave. You have to make all of your plans without anyone in your environment knowing about it. You have to plan every minute detail, and then the actual move has to be done in secret or made to look like a schedule break of some kind, etc. Say no. If anyone in the family or your abusive partner tries to persuade you to stay, stand your ground. Chances are that this type of conversation has been held many times, and the abuser has always won. On occasion, because you just want a moment's peace on the subject. Your thinking won't disappear, but your plans on how to execute such an exit will be secretive, and possibly you will choose the venues where such discussions can take place, etc. Stay calm. If it's an employer, you may need a reference in the future to help with future employment elsewhere, so the way you leave matters. No employer can deliberately write negative things in a reference anyway, but they can and do write fairly bland references, giving the basic facts such as start date and nature of the job, etc. If it's an abusive partner, stay calm. Try not to look stressed and move with stealth. Don't plan the move when the family members or partner are home or expected home at a given time. Remain calm. Move your things. Keep your heartbeat as steady as possible. Leave. Arrive at a new location. Get inside. Lock the doors and breathe. Don't do it alone. If possible, in the workplace, one would normally discuss such matters with human resources. In the case of Meghan, the one team who are legally required to keep information to themselves breached confidences, discussed with the nation's media, and refused medical assistance when requested. The Spencer family came to the rescue, with a friend of Princess Diana assisting the Sussexes. There is a phrase at the end of this article, on the website references below, where it states, "If anyone asks you why you left, just give them a phrase like this: I was unhappy, and leaving was the best decision for my health." This is very similar to the reasons given by Prince Harry as to why he decided to remove his family from that toxic environment, with a range of forces operating against them, including UK media, printed and televised. The royal family and their media thought Sussexes would fail in their effort to be self-financing, and that Harry would return to the fold by himself. If Meghan returned too, the abuse would have been much worse towards Meghan. It was clear that they wanted to break her spirit, or worse. Don't let someone else take your peace. A quote, "Do not let the behaviour of others destroy your inner peace," end of quote, by the Dalai Lama. The first step in this process is choosing to respond to things which are in your control. We cannot make another person think, feel, or behave in a certain way. All you can control is your response to the other person. The purpose of clarifying your intentions and setting boundaries as a result. The boundaries are to protect your time, energy, values, self-worth, self-respect, and peace of mind. Ask for a change in the other person if you think that the person is capable of change. Do not ask for a change in quality or personality. Ask for the exact behaviour you would like in a specific situation. Set a limit. Limit is a guide to a response to someone else's behaviour. You cannot control someone else, but you can decide what you are willing to do and what you are not willing to do before you remove yourself. Acceptance, choosing what you can live with. Remove yourself. You have the option to remove yourself from a conversation, a situation, or even a relationship, if necessary. A quick historical summary about the heir and the spare. First one, Prince Albert and Prince Edward. Imagine if Prince Charles had abdicated back in the 1980s and his brother Andrew was suddenly next in line to the throne. Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie would now be two of the most famous women in the world, and Beatrice would one day be queen. This is what basically happened to the newly acceded King Edward VIII, who abdicated in 1936. He was not allowed to marry Wallis Simpson and remain king, so by relinquishing his claim to the throne, he changed the fate of his younger brother Albert, who became George VI, but also that of the new king's daughters, i.e. Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret. So, Queen Elizabeth and Princess Margaret. The Queen was 10 years of age when her future was suddenly very clearly laid out by her uncle's abdication, but the role of her younger sister, Princess Margaret, was less defined. For a while, Margaret had a number of partnerships and had high numbers of tours and engagements, but soon settled into the life of a royal wife and mother. As time went by, Margaret became known more for her decadent lifestyle and various romantic entanglements. Royal engagements reduced and health deteriorated. As the Queen took on more responsibilities, Margaret's role became increasingly redundant. Prince Charles and Prince Andrew. Initially, things looked okay. Andrew embarked on a promising career in the Royal Navy, served in the Falklands War. Together with Charles and Diana, Andrew and Sarah, his wife, were regarded as key members of the royal family throughout the 80s. As the role of the family evolved and necessary adjustments were made to finances, Andrew made some very questionable decisions on how he made his money, and his lavish spending earned him the nickname Air Miles Andy. Prince William and Prince Harry. Charles and Diana were determined that even though William was destined for the top job, Harry would not feel neglected, and so, as much as possible, their sons were raised the same. Initially, anyway. Harry's supposed teenage partying threatened to create a damagingly frivolous reputation similar to that of his great-aunt Margaret and Uncle Andrew. As he has grown up, his role became clearer. The Prince focuses mainly on three key areas: his charity centre Bali, which he set up at the age of 19, the Invictus Games in 2014, and mental health issues, after a decade of bottling up emotions over his mother's death. Most writers of that period, i.e. royal writers, regarded the then fifth in line as an important part of the royal family for at least the next 20 years, before Prince George and Princess Charlotte are able to start full-time royal duties. Note how this hamster wheel life just keeps spinning. Children brought into the world to be a stopgap if anything happens to the heir. It is assumed that they will have no aspirations of their own, and it is drilled into them from an early age that they must never outshine the heir, and that the heirs will never be publicly shamed or held to account for things which can usually be passed off as activities of the spare. The spares were notoriously treated like whipping boys of history, as explained in previous SG UK podcasts and articles. Always take the fall and the punishment for the older sibling, who is destined to be heir one day. Prince George and Princess Charlotte. We await to see what happens to the next generation. Despite reports in the press to the contrary, the signs are there that history is repeating itself. There is an assumption that royal children will just accept their fate. The heir-in-waiting will be treated differently, no matter what is said by royal rota. Princess Diana knew this would happen and always said William will be taken care of by Charles and the establishment within the palaces, but she would ensure that Harry was not left out of things. Diana poured her love into Harry so that he would not feel marginalised by being left out of things done by his older brother. The signs are already there that George is being treated differently to his siblings. I have my doubts that a monarchy will exist for George to move into his predetermined role. We shall see. Thankfully, Prince Harry recognised that his role would be like ultimately, and he knew that he wanted to carve out a purposeful role for himself and a family of his own, if he found someone to share his life with. By 2016, the traditionally held views on anyone who is not deemed a true blue blood, or at least a Caucasian with affluent fortunes, would have been tolerated, but an affluent multimillionaire female who was a person of colour, multilingual, double major student, a UN ambassador, and spent time as an intern in the USA Embassy in Spain, and an ardent feminist, was too much for the UK royals to take. The clutching of pearls began. An insidious, toxic and extremely dangerous plan has hatched that was based on a centuries-old playbook, and one which they truly believed would bring this matter under control very quickly. The UK family made a huge mistake when they embarked on this dangerous strategy, and with each failed plan, the next course of action was even more venomous. Now, here we are, 6 years later, having chased the Sussexes out of the UK with near-death experiences along the way prior to them leaving the country. And the UK royal family and its media are acting like a narcissistic ex-partner who cannot believe that their former spouse managed to get away without their knowledge, and all plans to significantly increase the risk of failure in each of their business ventures have backfired. And the Sussexes are going from strength to strength. Now the monarchy wants to allow visits for some things, but not for others. Security will only be provided for some things, and accommodation has to be on royal grounds, so that the shared security will be permissible. Note that Prince Charles was the one who removed security and stopped funding as soon as he knew the family were in Canada in November and December 2019. The Sussexes now have their own security team, which they hired in the USA and who travelled with the family. But due to increased risk to the lives of the Sussexes due to media coverage, Harry offered to pay for security himself from the unit of the Metropolitan Police, as they have access to the terror threats, and currently provide security personnel for the royals. Permission was refused. Note that Charles and William sit on the committee who decide who can pay for the services of the Met Police. Lots of people have secured services from the Met Police and paid accordingly. It seems far from acceptable that the Sussexes have been refused. An appeal process is underway. It almost seems just like a narcissistic ex-partner wanting control over what their former spouse does, and when and with whom, and where. Is the British monarchy on its way out? A quote from the Guardian newspaper, a headline published on the 17th of February 2022, and an article written by Polly Toynbee. Clearly, Britain loses more than it gains from the monarchy. Let us be brave and end it. The Royal Jubilee would be a cheerful end to a state of affairs that cannot be allowed to continue. Time to return sovereignty to the people. The need for an elected president has become urgent now Boris Johnson's arrival in Downing Street tests conventions, laws and civil rights beyond their limits. The Commons Speaker turns out to be powerless against lies told to his face. There is no voice to admonish, check or protect against elective dictatorship by a wrecker of a Prime Minister with a strong majority. His MPs are shockingly derelict. The next section of the article, which contains images that I've used before in previous podcasts, and I will try and put the slides on for the podcast on YouTube, but the two images are about how online hate can transform into real-life violence. One of them depicts a sliding scale of an escalation in hate activity. So initially a group gathers together and share their views. The group then defines itself. It then disparages its target. It then begins to taunt its target. It then attacks without weapons. It then attacks with weapons. And finally destroys its target. You will see, hopefully on the screen with the podcast, and you will definitely see in detail these two academic models, which give a series of, I said, escalation points. And on each of those, you can, well, I think you can cross-map behaviour of UK media, behaviour of the monarchy who instruct UK media, behaviour of government, behaviour of the media industry generally, printed and online and on TV. You can map across direct examples of things that they have been doing since 2016 with regards to Meghan. I know they've done that with other people before and since, but this is just talking about the Sussexes here. You can map across with both models incidents. The second image is described as the pyramid of hate, and it was created by Echoes and Reflections and the Anti-Defamation League. It starts off level 1, verbal abuse using derogatory language, name-calling, stereotyping. Level 2, avoidance, withdrawal, avoiding contact, making people invisible, acting on prejudice. Level 3, discrimination, using any power to hand to control who gets what. Withholding crucial information, excluding people from jobs, education and or housing. Level 4, physical attack, graffiti, property damage, harassment, physical bullying, rape. Level 5, genocide, ethnic cleansing, murder, suicide. Again, using the groups that I've just mentioned a few minutes ago, I can easily map on every level, possibly not level 5 yet, but we're dangerously close. But on all the previous 4, there are many, many examples over the last 5 to 6 years of what various members of those groups that I've mentioned have done and continue to do. And like I said, one day, I truly believe people will be held to account for this, because it's people saying that it's freedom of speech, but both of these models, and there are plenty others, The FBI uses these and other examples of academic studies, proven research, things that start off as being seen as not serious and freedom of speech and just things that people say. Both of the models I've just talked about start off like that in level 1, and it shows you how very easy it is to escalate from online activity to physical activity, and then within that there are levels until you destroy the target at the end. Never forget that we nearly lost Meghan to suicide, and that's the top level. That's level 5. That's how dangerously close we came just using one group of the ones that I've mentioned, and that was only one incident. There have been several things that would have led up to that. So it's serious, and yes, it's time for people to be held to account. And as some of you know, this particular podcast channel has involvement in setting up and is currently working on, and with others, on an international campaign to address these areas and more. More news to follow over the coming months. I do go into more detail in the article. I don't have the time to do it on the podcast here, about particular individuals who seem to have made it their mission to target Meghan, one in particular. So I do go into more detail about that and where that fits into the grand scheme of things. So I haven't ignored it. I do know, including the throwing over the balcony comment that was made very recently. I have added that to the article. How do narcissists control you? Narcissists, I should say, control you. What happens when you break up with them? Things narcissists do at the end of a relationship. They may become combative, passive-aggressive, hostile, and even more controlling. They fail to understand other people's needs and values. They are hyper-focused on their egos, but do not account for how their actions affect others. They do whatever it takes to restore their sense of power. Things a narcissistic person or family will do. They blame it all on you, i.e. blame the victim for the breakdown within the family. Fight it. They will continue to argue about the breakup, try to wear you down, try to make you jealous, post photos and have articles written about who will take your place. How many combinations of the Magnificent Seven have we seen in the UK in the last 2 years? The disastrous Caribbean tour reeks of desperation. Guilt you into staying or returning. They promise to change. They stalk you. The 4-figure total of articles written every week about the Sussexes, based on no direct information from the Sussexes or their team, is mind-blowing. It may attract a few more coins than the rest of the royal family combined, but ultimately it is helping to weaken and ultimately dismantle that monarchy. In the interim, the aim is to destroy the mental health of their targets. Stalking activity, along with other illegal activity, has been going on for years now, by at least one media personality. This is something, as I've said a few minutes ago, that needs to be addressed at a national level now. Both UK media, as a conglomerate group, and certain individuals within it. Acts are being taken and committed across borders. Intervention is needed. So actually, in many ways, it's gone beyond a national level because they've ignored it for the last 6 years. So our campaign is about international intervention. And then the final point, the way they sort of come back at you, is to try and seek revenge. If the perpetrator cannot fight you or convince you to change your mind, they may try to hurt you in other ways. In conclusion, one would think that rather than abuse the family member in a variety of ways during his life, and then take it up several notches when he finally finds his person to make a life with, but the family reject this person because of the colour of her skin, but wrap it up in any other description that is anything but the actual truth. 4 years later, with no let-up in that abusive behaviour, the Sussexes leave the UK. And yet, from January 2020 to the end of March 2020, all Royal Rota personnel describe the Sussexes as irrelevant, and that they would not cover any of their work in post-March. Oh, how we looked forward to such an environment, but it never happened. The Sussexes stopped dealing with the Royal Rota at the end of March, so no story that they write in their rags have come from the Sussexes or their team. Often the headlines are clickbait, designed to attract anger in some way, and as long as the person clicks on a link, the money is made from that engagement. There is no concern about any harm or discomfort the contents of such article may cause. All content written in UK tabloids is mainly fantasy or second-hand news that they have turned into a negative, toxic spin story. The growth of hate online is worrying, and the UK certainly plays a prominent role on social media platforms. Reports have been produced by Bot Sentinel based on in-depth research about the particular brand of hate coming from UK royalists and the sheer volume of single-purpose hate accounts set up specifically to target Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. These reports have been forwarded onto a number of outlets as part of the global campaign about coercive control across borders. Over the coming months, it is hoped that more information will be forthcoming about this campaign. Watch this space. The UK Monarchy want to return control of the Sussexes back to the royal family. Everything that has been done these last 2 years is to try and give the impression that they can have a say in Sussex affairs. They cannot. The Sussexes are doing extremely well with all of their projects and philanthropic actions, and if another contract does not come along, ever, the Sussex family are set for life and have no need to return to a toxic environment and be controlled and abused again for a decade or so and then cast aside, like every other spare in UK royal history. Harry and Meghan are not high in the line of succession, and they are to be commended that they are planning for their family and ensuring that a legacy is left for the children to take forward as adults. Children growing up in a loving environment and where toxicity only comes from the place of birth of their father and his relatives. Even the Sussex's dog, Guy, suffered the wrath of the royal household. I repeat, it is a very toxic environment, set up to pit family members against each other, and only the heirs to the throne fussed over and who live in a bubble of fantasy. Everyone else is there to serve them, and subsequent children are brought into the world to be the foot soldiers of the eldest sibling, or the replacement if all the ones higher in the line of succession are no longer with us. It is an abusive environment from the start, and the indoctrination is real. No one looking in with vision, as opposed to looking through rose-coloured spectacles, is at all surprised that the Sussexes left the toxicity. I am certain that Archwell Foundation will last longer and appear in many publications well beyond the lifespan of the UK monarchy. If royal reporting was honest, as opposed to writing things which ensure that they can put food on their tables the following month, it would be factual to state if Harry's stepping back from senior royal duties causes the UK monarchy to reach an end, then it says more about the lacklustre, lack of competency and zero charisma of the remaining royals that will bring on its demise. one member of the family leaving a truly successful organisation would not cause it to fold. That one member who left with his family is set for life already, and their contracts they have secured are lucrative. Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, could have been such an asset to the royals and would have ensured a few more decades of a UK monarchy. Instead, fragile egos took over and racism raised its head and was encouraged throughout the country. And we are now where we are. Harry and Meghan and their foundation are and will continue to be just fine. Archie and Lili have fabulous parents and a wonderful legacy for them to carry forward later in life. The ship has indeed sailed. In fact, a whole flotilla of seafaring vehicles representing Sussex's business ventures are all buoyant now and travelling away from the UK. Yep, the Sussex ship has sailed. And I might add, and all the Sussex supporters have gone with them. That's it from me for another week. Hope you found that interesting. As I said, the article contains far more details and far more images of academic research. Hope you find that interesting. And I look forward to the chats in the comments section. And I'll speak to you again next week. Bye from me. Bye from Ivy. Bye.